Good morning, viewers, and welcome to this episode of Electoral Reform Digest. With us here on this first episode of the Electoral Reform Digest is somebody who is a public accountability and democratic reforms advocate. He's a civil society leader, and he has championed several campaigns against corruption and electoral reforms and good governance. He is also the Executive Director, Pairing Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, Mr. Ezenwa Nwagwu. Welcome, sir. And so today we have some questions that are pending on the hearts of Nigerians, and so we'd just like to get your perspective to these issues. And so the first on our list is that we want to talk about the off-cycle election. And as we approach the Edo governorship elections, do you expect any significant changes in voter turnout compared to the last election, considering the recent increase of 4.9% in voter registration so far?
Well, first is there are very clear reasons why people go to register. Most times, what you see in voter registration does not reflect there are arguments or motivations about how the voting strength of a particular community has direct implication to the amenities that come to their community. So most times communities show up their voter registration strength and mobilization to be able to ensure that they have voting strength.
Sure.
We also know that the voter's card for many people is also a means of identification.
Sure.
And so, because it's a means of identification, people also think it's easier to access it than the international passport or
True.
driver's license. So that's one. So, but again, it also makes a lie of the thing that people are not enthusiastic about elections. And people keep telling you that they are no longer interested in elections because of what happened in 2019 and 2020. That crap, what you find in the do is a direct confrontation with that, also. The fact that people are excited enough to want to get the
Sure.
is believing democracy is also great.
So possibly it's a 50-50 chance that people might or might not
That's another thing
altogether.
Yes. There was an election in Kebbi State, where rappers and money were shared. The voter turnout was huge. So the turnout had nothing to do with voting. It had to do with the incentives
that came with it.
That came with it. And then you had another by-election in the Chosa local government, where you have the big people of Lagos and the rest of them, and the voter turnout was less than 15%.
Wow.
So so the play around there has to be a nuanced engagement with the conversation around voter apathy in Nigeria.
True.
Because when people say, they just say, some will say, yes, democracy may not be delivering, for majority of the citizens in terms of our idea of what we call democratic dividends. But there are the big issue about democracy is about its intrinsic value, the value of freedom.
True.
The idea that we can do this podcast without anybody watching over is something you cannot quantify so if it is about building bridges, if it is about cost of living, if it is about the military can do all of that. But the intrinsic values of democracy is the ability to question, the ability to engage, the ability to, even sue, as it were, is all part of that. So what am I saying? I'm just saying that what could affect voter turnout may not necessarily be what you are thinking in terms of whether it's 50-50 chance. If there is siege mentality, and I know you are referring to Edo particularly.
Yes, Edo.
If the cultic atmosphere that is being created by the cult groups that are not being ready, the incendiary conversations, the inane campaign that we are seeing in Edo is enough put up.
True.
But once the security agencies are able to guarantee, in a civil manner, professional manner, that they can, you know, provide for observers, INEC officials, voters, secure the environment for them to vote. I think that they do for this is a very sophisticated one. I think
Thank you very much for that perspective. And so that leads me to my next question, which is now going towards the agency that is in charge of that backs up INEC when it comes to voter and electoral education. And so the National Education Agency plays a crucial role when it comes to voter education. From a perspective, despite their current limitations, what additional strategies can they implement to improve voter education campaigns and combat voter apathy?
why do you want us not to talk about their limitations? Their limitations have direct implications for the outcome and output that you want to have. What kind of funding is available to them? You want National Orientation Agency to mobilize citizens against polio. You want them to talk about cholera. You want them to talk about mpox. You want them to talk about elections. But who bothers about their budget? Isn't it important to look at how much do you put in that agency that it demands so much?
Sure.
So there has to be collaboration. There has to be collaboration between INEC and National Education Agency. And indeed, even government generally to fund that agency that has responsibility for mass mobilization. Sometimes the whole thing about voter education, civic education has been outsourced to civil society and INEC because of budget constraints for the national education. But in the midst of all of that, I think that they are doing their level best to still, at least even if it's in a tokenistic manner, to apportion the resources they have to the different, in their colleagues in terms of what is important. Edo is important. The NOA in Edo should rev up in terms of his manpower to be able to engage in spite of those constraints. What I'm saying is that I don't think we should shy away from always putting out what can hinder the kind of expectations that we want for
Yeah, no,
agencies.
true. Very true. That leads me to my next question, which is now focusing on INEC in the main. And then, so reflecting on the lessons of 2022 elections, are there specific reforms that you would like INEC to prioritize for the forthcoming off-cycle polls this year?
I've always made the argument that election is a multi-stakeholder engagement. And it makes the real troublers of election comfortable anytime we discuss INEC and put INEC in the center of the conversation. The work of INEC is simply to conduct elections, right?
Yeah, true.
That's constitutional responsibility
True.
to conduct elections. Now, no matter how far flung the community is, you are going to find a ballot box there.
True.
In those states, you are not going to see Paco back. You are going to see ballot box. What does that mean? What it means is that INEC is present
at the polling station.
It might, for whatever reason, there can be punctuality challenges and logistics challenges and all that. But at the end of the day, INEC will be present in all the polling units in the state.
True.
So, who works to subvert and take dubious advantage during elections?
The political parties.
And their candidates. So INEC will go conduct elections. So you're asking me what are reforms? The big issue in Edo has to do with the siege mentality that violence puts on the ground. It's not real, but it's there. They create it. It's created by the politicians to see how much they can ensure that voters don't turn.
True.
Okay, so the INEC officials are there. They go to see whether they can manipulate INEC officials. And there are INEC officials, disgruntled, unscrupulous INEC officials, who are always hawking non-existing solutions to politicians. As we speak now, any politician that wants to win election has to win it at the polling unit. Elections are no longer won in INEC.
True.
Unfortunately, a lot of people are not aware of this. So what then happens? Why do you have vote buying? Who does the vote buying? The politicians. So when you say what new reforms, the simple issue will be an attitudinal thing. INEC must ensure that if materials get to the polling units on time, the excuse for the infrastructure and topography of Edo State will no longer hold water because we already know that it exists. We know that there's flooding, we know that the roads are bad, so you can't come with that excuse anymore. If it comes an excuse, it will not be tenable.
True.
Because it's an existential challenge.
Exactly. So there should have been plans to mitigate it.
There must be plans to mitigate it. So the second most important thing is to also ensure that not just that the materials on time, that we don't have a repeat of the scandalous Kogi situation where we field results were abandoned. Whether those have any effect on the election itself is another conversation. But those kind of scandalous things must never be allowed to rear their heads if they do. And people who engage in that should be fished out and punished, and so that it will be a deterrent for others. Then the most important part is the security. The security agencies must be professional and impartial and neutral. If that happens, what will it mean? It will mean that they will come out early to escort INEC materials and officials to the polling units.
True.
If they do not come out early to escort INEC officials and materials to the polling unit, there will be the punctuality index will suffer. What it means is that polls may not be able to open on time.
Yeah.
And majority of the people who will be observing the election will not understand that it is a dereliction of the ability for security provisioning that has necessitated that lateness.
True.
So the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security in Edo State, working in conjunction with the National Security Advisor, who now plays much bigger role than the IG and the commissioners of police, must ensure that vehicles are maintained. What do I mean? The armored personnel carriers must be serviced. They are not going to, it's not just on election day. We have a week or two to election. Ensure that those carriers are in good shape, that the vehicles for patrol are in good shape, and that the resource, the finance and the funding for the men and women who will come for election duty from different parts of the country mobilized to provide security for election in the Edo State is given to them ahead in a way that guarantees that they will not be looking out for support from the politicians.
And plan better too.
And plan better. The marine police, understanding that there are riverine areas in the district, must also be so that we don't surrender the transportation of logistic voting materials to vendors who in most parts may even be aligned with one political party or the other. I think that is key.
That is robust. That is very robust. Thank you very much for throwing light on that. And then lastly, in rounding up, I'd like to just ask about, in the light of the LG autonomy, there has been conversations about INEC conducting local government elections. This represents a shift from the current practice where the SIEC conducts the election at the state level. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think that the SIEC have the capacity to conduct and manage local government elections effectively without interference?
Well, what experience and observation has taught me is that once we have a problem, we want to outsource that problem. It will never ever be. So what is the challenge with the sex? The challenge with the sex is that they have come under the broad strings of chief executives.
True.
And so in most states, the elections conducted by the state independent electorate do not meet the threshold of integrity, minimum threshold of integrity. So people now say, okay, INEC should now take over and think that will solve it. So the bigger issue is, why are they not? So why don't you create a situation in which the sex can have some kind of independence. And my suggestion that is that we need to create ad hoc SIECs. What does that mean? State independent electoral commissioners can be peopled by civil society, professional security agencies, political parties are appointed, and they can then appoint their chairman from among themselves. And then they can also have first line charge like INEC has. The money for conducting local government elections can be given straight to the state independent electoral commission, so that it is not at the whims and caprices of the chief executives. That is key because it's about neutrality, it's about impartiality, and that does not exist now. So even if you, in one hand, we are saying, let us reduce burden on bundle INEC. There's a whole campaign about unbundling INEC. What
Very true.
Take out the responsibility that is bogging down INEC away from it and allow it to face the business of conducting elections.
And strict electoral administration.
And on the one hand, they are now saying add more burden to them by bringing, local government. It can be done. INEC can do it, but it does not sit well with the principles of federalism that we talk about, that we want to deepen. We ought to be ceding power from the federal and giving it to the states, but with the checks and balances that are required. So we need political autonomy for local government. By political autonomy for the local government, it means independent SIECs that have the capacity to organize elections that can beat even if it is the threshold of integrity and transparency.
Very true. I think that states the literal meaning of autonomy in the first place. Thank you very much for that perspective. And so in your final thoughts, I'd just like to ask, what is your advice for the stakeholders that are going to be managing the elections in the Edo State forthcoming governmental elections?
I will not stop repeating the fact that elections are won and lost in the polling unit. And I say this as from a practitioner's experience. Any INEC official who tells you that he can be of help to, any civil society person that tells you that he can assist you, is in a frolic. Today in Nigeria, if you don't have party agents, organic party agents, what does that mean by organic party agents? Party agents who belong to your party, who believe in your party, playing that role for you at the polling units, taking results from the polling unit and sending it directly to you in a known, server of your own, where you do, collation, where you do practical collation by yourself. There's no hope for you as a political party. So you can run around electoral officers and the local government supervisors to help you change NYC officials and bring untrained people. You can do all that drama. But if a political party that is invested in winning election mobilizes party agents, mines its results from the polling units, and ensures that they are not manipulated out by that polling unit, no INEC official can change it.
Thank you very much, sir. It's been a pleasure having you on this episode of Electoral Reform Digest. We thank you so much for your time, and kindly catch us on this episode, in the next episode, as we bring you much more details. Thank you very much, sir, for your time, and see you in the next episode. Thank you.